The moment Prince Harry stepped into that room, something felt off. Not because of the cameras. Not because of the silence. But because of the look on his face. A look the world had never seen before. For years, people had watched him walk away from everything, the palace, the traditions, even the family name that shaped his entire life. And every single time there was one constant beside him. Meghan. But now, something had changed. The tension in his eyes, the hesitation in his voice, it was enough to make royal watchers ask one question nobody expected. What could possibly make Prince Harry question everything now? And why did those close to him say this private confession had been building for years? Because this wasn't just another royal disagreement. This felt personal. Deeply personal. And if the whispers are true, it may explain why Harry has looked increasingly isolated in recent months. It started quietly. Not with a scandal. Not with the headlines. But with distance. The kind of distance you can't fake. Public appearances became fewer. The body language changed. Even during interviews, there were moments where Harry seemed distracted, almost disconnected, like he was carrying something far heavier than the public understood. At first, people dismissed it. Stress, family pressure, media attacks. But then came the private conversations. Sources close to royal circles began hinting that Harry had been revisiting old memories, asking uncomfortable questions, connecting dots from the past that no longer made sense. And that's when everything started unraveling. Because according to insiders, there was one moment Harry couldn't stop replaying. The birth of Archie. Not the celebration. Not the announcement. But everything surrounding it. The secrecy. The contradictions. The timelines. At the time, the world barely noticed. But Harry did. And years later, those small inconsistencies reportedly became impossible to ignore. Why were certain details kept so tightly controlled? Why were some family members allegedly left in the dark longer than expected? And why, according to palace rumours, did one senior royal once warn Harry to look closer? That warning stayed buried. Until now. For years, Harry defended Meghan against everything. The press, the palace, even his own brother, Prince William. Especially William. Their relationship collapsed under the weight of accusations, betrayal and silence. But here, what makes this even stranger? Some say William's anger was never just about royal duties. It was about what he believed Harry wasn't seeing. And Harry refused to listen. Until recently. Because halfway through this story, the entire narrative flips. A former staff member, someone who had worked closely with the Sussex household, allegedly came forward with information that reopened old wounds. Not proof, not evidence, but enough to force Harry into a private spiral. Phone calls were made. Documents were revisited. Conversations from years ago suddenly sounded different. And one detail stood out more than all the rest. A date. One single date that didn't align. That was the second hook. The thing that changed Harry's perspective forever. Because once he started digging, he couldn't stop. And the deeper he went, the more isolated he became. Friends noticed. Family noticed. Even Meghan, according to speculation, sensed something had shifted. The trust was cracking. And trust, once broken inside a marriage already under global pressure, becomes dangerous. Then came the emotional breaking point. A private meeting. No cameras. No palace officials. Just Harry and someone from his past. The details of that meeting remain sealed in rumour. But what allegedly came out of it left Harry devastated. Witnesses claimed he left in tears. Not angry. Not shouting. Just broken. And for a man who has spent years speaking openly about trauma, loss and healing, this looked like a different kind of pain. The kind that comes when your reality no longer feels real. Then, in what many are calling his most vulnerable moment, Harry reportedly admitted something chilling. That for years he ignored signs. Signs because he wanted peace. Signs because love can make truth harder to face. Signs because admitting doubt would mean admitting everyone else might have been right. But right about what? That's where the speculation becomes explosive. Some believe Harry's confession wasn't about betrayal in the way people think. Not necessarily about deception, but about control. About how narratives were built around him. How decisions were made for him. How truths may have been softened or hidden. And if that's true, it changes everything. Not just for Harry, but for the monarchy, for Meghan, for the legacy of Archie. Because the biggest question remains unanswered. What exactly did Harry discover? Was it enough to destroy the marriage? Or was it something far more complicated, something tied to years of secrecy, pressure, and emotional survival? And here's the part nobody can ignore. Neither Harry nor Meghan has publicly confirmed any of these rumours. No statement. No denials. Just silence. And sometimes in royal history, silence says more than words ever could. But if there's one thing we've learned from Prince Harry's journey, it's this. The truth has a way of surfacing. Even when buried beneath titles, interviews, and carefully crafted stories. And now, with the world watching closer than ever, one question hangs in the air. If Harry really has begun questioning the foundation of his own life, what happens when he finally stops protecting everyone else and starts protecting himself?